One thing that I also feel like is that respect should be mutual. Since we've been dealing and going through it, this guy over here decided he no longer wanted to wear his ring.
I feel like once we get to a place where this respect is restored, then we can wear the ring.
So if it was a question from Yandy about your ring, what would your answer be to her?
My concept of wearing a ring is, people together as one. I'm trying to get there.
Not there yet.
But what is the together part or the one part?
Both.
Yandy never expected her life to twist into the kind of emotional maze that would later define her existence with Mendeecees. But the roots of it all reach far deeper than people think. Long before the chaos, long before the heartbreak. She was known in her village as a girl with an unusual kind of light, something warm, intuitive, almost prophetic. People said she carried the kind of inner fire that only appeared once every few generations. A rare inheritance passed down through the women of her bloodline. She didn't fully understand her abilities then. But her mother warned her that such gifts were both blessings and burdens. And that one day, she would be forced to choose between love and truth. At the time, Yandy had brushed it off as one of those dramatic maternal sayings, the kind meant to scare a child into discipline. But years later, she would realize those words were the closest thing to a prophecy she'd ever been given. Her connection with Mendeecees began innocently. Without magic or mystery, just two young souls crossing paths at exactly the right moment. He was charming, protective, confident, and carried a quiet kind of authority that made Yandy feel safe in ways she didn't recognize as dangerous. Their bond deepened quickly, seamlessly, almost too easily, as if something unseen was pulling them together. And maybe something was. There were whispers that the women in Yandy's family didn't just fall in love, they bound themselves to the men they chose, forming spiritual ties stronger than emotion, stronger than logic, stronger even than reality. It wasn't intentional. It was simply part of the lineage, a mystical imprint that turned commitment into destiny. So when Yandy chose Mendeecees, even before she understood her full power, something ancient clicked into place. But what Yandy didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that someone had already touched a part of Mendeecees' spirit before she ever stepped into his life. Erica, their history wasn't just the messy ex-drama Yandy assumed it was. There was an older, deeper connection there, the kind formed during moments of vulnerability, during mistakes, during nights neither of them expected to matter. While the village saw Erica as loud, impulsive, reckless, she carried her own wound. A silent confidence built on the memory of knowing Mendeecees first. And even though their relationship had ended long before Yandy came into the picture, a shadow of that connection remained. Floating between them like unfinished business, everything shifted the night. Yandy visited the elder priestess, a woman who had guided generations of gifted women through their awakenings. Yandy had gone seeking advice about strengthening her relationship. Wanting clarity, wanting reassurance that the future she saw with Mendeecees was truly theirs. Instead, the priestess delivered a warning that chilled her. Once you bind yourself to him, the vow becomes part of your soul. And once sealed, it cannot be undone. Choose wisely, for the vow will blind you to betrayal. Yandy thought the message was symbolic, poetic, maybe even exaggerated. In her youthful confidence, she didn't realize the priestess meant every word literally. Still, despite the warning, Yandy moved forward with the binding vow ceremony, a private ritual performed by women of her bloodline, meant to ensure unbreakable loyalty between soulmates. The ritual wasn't flashy or glamorous. It was quiet, intimate, sacred. She stood beneath candlelight, hands trembling, whispering promises that echoed into the unseen layers of reality. The moment the vow sealed, she felt a warmth spreading across her chest. A powerful shift that made the world feel clearer, sharper, more certain. She believed she had done the right thing. She believed she had secured love, future, family. She believed she had chosen destiny. But destiny wasn't as simple as she thought. What? Yandy didn't see what no one told her was that a binding vow only works cleanly when both spirits are untouched. And Mendeecees wasn't untouched. His history with Erica had left a spiritual imprint, a lingering resonance, a shadow tether that the universe had never resolved. So when Yandy bound herself to him, her vow didn't attach to a blank slate. It fused with the remnants of his past connection. Rather than creating clarity, it created distortion. Rather than giving her certainty, it amplified her emotions in unpredictable ways. And while she saw this as deep intuition, as love sharpening her senses, the truth was that her vow was reacting to a conflict she didn't yet understand. All the while, Yandy lived her life believing she had secured her future. She trusted Mendeecees completely, unable to see how the vow had muted her instincts and smoothed over red flags. She didn't notice the way he flinched when Erica's name came up, or how his energy tightened whenever conversations drifted toward his past. She didn't question the unexplained nights, the stories that didn't fully line up, or the documents she once thought she saw tucked in a drawer only for them to mysteriously disappear. The vow had done its job. It protected her heart. But it also blinded her, and this blindness would soon become the reason her entire world unraveled. The tension began quietly, almost like a shift in the atmosphere. The kind that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up before your mind can explain why. And for Yandy, that feeling started the moment she noticed Mendeecees' ceremonial ring missing from its velvet-lined box. At first, she told herself it had to be nothing. Maybe he misplaced it. Maybe he'd tucked it away somewhere safe. Maybe it had simply slipped his mind, but the more she tried to reassure herself, the heavier the unease grew, curling around her thoughts like thick smoke. The ring wasn't just jewelry. It was bound to their vow, enchanted to glow faintly whenever their spiritual connection was strong. And for it to vanish without explanation was enough to send a shiver through anyone who understood what it truly symbolized. Yandy approached Mendeecees gently at first, asking if he had moved it, but his answer quick-clipped. And avoiding eye contact triggered every instinct she had spent years learning to trust. His voice sounded rehearsed, as if he had prepared that response long before she ever asked the question. And that alone made her heart pound with a mix of fear and dread. She tried to shake it off and distract herself with her duties in the community. But everywhere she went, whispers, half-truths, and strange looks followed her like ghosts that refused to disappear. The uneasiness turned into suspicion when she passed through the Seer's corridor later that night. And the torches lining the stone walls flickered at her presence, an omen she could never ignore. The Seer's chamber, usually dim and quiet, pulsed with an eerie energy that made her stomach twist as she stepped inside. The Seer, a woman whose eyes seemed to see through souls. Instead of face is gestured for Yandy to sit without saying a single word. The silence itself felt like a warning. When the Seer finally spoke, her voice was low and gravelly, weaving itself into the air like smoke. She told Yandy that a shadow had been following Mendeecees for weeks, clinging to him so tightly that it distorted his aura, hiding parts of his truth even from the spirits who usually guided their household. As the Seer moved her hand over a glowing bowl filled with enchanted water, shapes began to form in the swirling reflections. At first, Yandy thought she was imagining things, but then a sharp flash of gold appeared Mendeecees' missing ring. But what she saw next made her breath catch painfully in her chest. The ring wasn't alone. It was pressed against another hand, delicate but firm, belonging unmistakably to Erica. Yandy's pulse hammered as the water projected a clearer image. A parchment sealed with crimson wax, stamped with an unfamiliar sigil, one not used in her house or by her lineage. The Seer whispered that the sigil represented a secret binding ceremony performed in isolation, hidden from public view, hidden even from the vows Yandy and Mendeecees shared. It was a ritual only used when two people wanted to join their fates without witnesses, without blessings, and without moral accountability. Yandy felt the ground beneath her shift, as though the air had been sucked out of the room. She tried to look away from the water, but the bowl showed more Mendeecees standing beside Erica, his hand hovering above hers, their palms tied together with shimmering thread. The exact gesture used in a sacred union. Yandy's chest tightened as she watched the scene unfold. The binding spell glowed with a deep red light, not the soft gold Yandy had been blessed with during her own ceremony. This red glow meant secrecy, ambition, and intention. It meant choice. Her breath shook as she whispered that it had to be an illusion. Okay, a misinterpretation, some manipulation crafted by someone jealous or vengeful. But the Seer's voice, calm and heavy with certainty, cut through her denial. She explained that the vision wasn't the future or a trick, it was the past. The ritual had taken place long before Yandy even pledged her public vow. Mendeecees hadn't just kept a secret. He had built a life behind the one he shared with her. The parchment drifted into view again, and this time Yandy noticed something she hadn't before. The date. She hadn't before. The date. She counted the years backward in her mind. her face draining of color as she realized the ceremony with Erica had occurred during a time Mendeecees claimed he had been traveling, seeking blessings for their household's future. The truth weighed on her chest like iron. The seer's chamber suddenly felt too small, too dark, too suffocating. Before Yandy could speak, the torches crackled violently, sending sparks across the stone floor as if reacting to her emotions. The seer urged her to stay calm, reminding her that spiritual energy could become dangerous when mixed with heartbreak. But how could she stay calm when everything she believed about her relationship had just fractured? She tried to collect herself, but the visions kept replaying in her mind. Mendeecees raising Erica's hand. It's the red glow tying their fates, the secret vow that now overshadowed her own. Questions tore through her like claws. Why didn't he tell her? Why did he hide a ceremony so significant? Why marry Erica in secret when he knew Yandy had given him everything her vow? Her loyalty, her magic, her future. The seer interrupted her thoughts by revealing one final piece. The ring never glowed around Yandy because their bond was fading. It glowed because it was still connected to the woman he had united with years before. Erica's aura had been pulling at it. Yandy's throat tightened as she stared into the bowl, feeling the world she built collapse, piece by piece. Her mind raced as the realization hit her harder than any vision. This wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal written into the very magic that bound their lives. She rose slowly from her seat, her legs trembling. Her voice shaky but laced with determination as she vowed to confront Mendeecees and demand answers. But even as she stepped out of the seer's chamber, she sensed something else lurking in the shadows. Something the seer hadn't spoken aloud. Something darker and more dangerous than a hidden marriage. The real twist was not that Mendeecees had secretly bound himself to Erica. The real twist was that he had done it willingly. The moment Yandy stepped out of the seer's chamber, the world around her seemed to tilt, as if reality itself was shifting beneath her feet. And she felt an eerie tremor in the air that made her skin prickle with a rising sense of dread. The hallways, normally steady and silent, flickered with strange distortions, walls stretching longer than they should. Shadows moving, even though nothing cast them. Whispers traveling through the stone like trapped souls trying to speak. She blinked hard, trying to clear her vision. But the unsettling warping only grew stronger, confirming the seer's warning that the truth she had just uncovered was beginning to unravel the magic that held her world together. As she moved deeper into the corridor, she saw flashes of illusions. Mendeecees standing with Erica, the ring glowing red, the parchment dripping with waxiette. These weren't visions from the past. They were haunting projections that followed her like ghosts, hungry for attention. She tried to steady her breathing, but every inhale felt sharp, like the air itself was resisting her presence. When she reached the central room of the house, she found Mendeecees sitting in the corner, his body tense and his expression unusually guarded, as though he sensed the storm swirling inside her. But before she could speak, a sudden burst of shimmering light erupted in the air between them. A projection orb one used for communication, not confrontation, floated upward and cracked open, spilling images across the room like a broken mirror scattering reflections. At first, Yandy thought it was another illusion. But then she realized the orb was replaying messages Mendeecees had sent days earlier, ones he had deleted from her view. She watched in stunned silence as his holographic figure whispered to someone off-screen, promising to finish what was started, promising that no one would ever know, promising loyalty not to Yandy. But to Erica, Yandy felt her knees weaken, not from the betrayal she had already absorbed that blow, but from the realization that Mendeecees wasn't just hiding a secret marriage. He was actively maintaining it. As the orb continued spilling its secrets, its projection finally shifted and revealed Erica's face, illuminated by candlelight, speaking in a voice filled with a mix of determination and desperation. She reminded Mendeecees of their ritual, of the vow they had taken in the shadowed clearing, and of the enchanted contract that still bound them. She warned him that Yandy's rising power, her growing influence, and her deepening connection to the household's magic would eventually threaten everything they had secured. Then came the twist, the moment the illusion cracked wide open. The seer's voice suddenly echoed from behind Yandy, urgent and trembling. She explained that the rune that appeared in the projections, the crimson symbol sealing the secret parchment, wasn't Erica's magic, nor was it Mendeecees. It was Yandy's. Yandy spun around, confused and breathless. her mind scrambling to understand how her own magical signature could appear in a ceremony she had never seen. The seer stepped closer, her eyes cold and unblinking, revealing that years ago, before Yandy even met Mendeecees, she had unknowingly forged a fear-bound spell once, created during a moment of vulnerability when she begged the spirits to prevent heartbreak. That spell, cast in desperation, hadn't protected her heart as she intended. Instead, it had created a path for destiny to twist itself into knots, pulling her toward Mendeecees even as it pulled him toward Erica. Binding the three of them in a triangle, none of them fully understood. Yandy felt the breath leave her body as the seer explained that fear-bound spells don't just influence emotion, they influence fate. They reshape timelines, alter connections, and amplify insecurities until they become prophecy. Her spell, running quietly beneath the surface for years, had drawn Mendeecees to her, but it had also intensified his bond with Erica, turning their past ritual into something far stronger, far darker, and far more permanent than it should have been. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was not just a victim of Mendeecees' choices, she had unknowingly fueled them. She stumbled back as the illusions around her intensified, showing scenes that shifted too quickly to follow Arca reaching for Mendeecees. Mendeecees disappearing into shadows, Yandy standing alone in a circle of broken vows, the red glow pulsing like a heartbeat. The house shook with the force of the magic as though the foundation itself was trying to correct the imbalance. The seer warned her that the consequences of a fear-bound spell don't end with revelation. They escalate until a confrontation breaks the cycle or destroys everyone caught within it. Yandy's mind raced as she tried to replay her memories, searching for the moment she cast the spell, but the memory was blurry, wrapped in grief and youthful fear. Before she could speak, the projection orb burst into sparks, raining down like fragments of shattered truth. The walls groaned as another twist erupted through the room. The rune that belonged to Yandy began glowing on her wrist, a mark she had mistaken for a childhood scar now pulsing with violent red light. The magic inside her reacted to the magic she had seen in the projections, proving the seer's words true. She had forged the thread that tied her to Mendeecees and Erica long before she ever knew either of them. A cold chill spread through her as she realized the full weight of the twist. The bond wasn't just emotional or symbolic, it was generational. The fear-bound spell she cast had been influenced by ancestral magic, by echoes of vows made and broken long before she was born. Meaning this conflict wasn't just between three people, was the resurfacing of an old war buried deep within her lineage. And now, with every secret exposed, every illusion shattered, and every truth burning through her skin, Yandy understood that the only way forward was confrontation, not with Mendeecees or Erica alone, but with the magic inside her that had started it all. By the next morning, the entire village felt different, buzzing with a tension that clung to the air like humidity before a violent storm. And Yandy could sense the shift the moment she stepped outside her door. What had once been a place where neighbors exchanged warm greetings and friendly glances had transformed, almost overnight, into a maze of side eyes, whispers, and subtle stares that lingered on her just a little too long. Rumors had spread faster than fire on dry grass, leaping from house to house, carried by gossiping tongues and enchanted scrolls that floated from one doorway to another, delivering half-truths disguised as breaking news. Projection orbs in the market center flickered constantly, replaying distorted snippets of Mendeecees' secret ceremony with Erica, though no one seemed to question how the footage appeared or who had leaked it. Yandy's heart clenched every time she saw the red glow of the binding thread on the screens, knowing that most people didn't care whether the images were taken out of context or manipulated. They cared only about the scandal, the spectacle, the drama that made them feel like they were part of something bigger. Soon the entire community split into factions, forming camps with fierce loyalty, one side rallying behind Erica, praising her for being the true first wife, claiming she had been wronged and erased. The other side defending Yandy, calling her the legitimate partner, insisting she was the victim of deception and dark magic. That night, when the entire village seemed to finally quiet down and the arguments outside faded into distant murmurs, Yandy found herself drawn toward the old mirror in her room, a relic passed down through generations, rumored to show not just reflections but truths hidden beneath layers of fate. She had avoided the mirror ever since the illusion started warping her reality. But something about the way it pulsed faintly in the dim candlelight made it impossible to ignore. Her feet moved on their own, almost as though the mirror was calling her. And as she stepped closer, the air thickened, heavy with the scent of burning sage and something far more ancient. The moment she touched its cold frame, the glass rippled like liquid, distorting her reflection into a blur before reshaping it into something far more terrifying. She saw herself lying on the ground, ringless, breathless, her eyes wide open but lifeless. A sharp chill shot down her spine as she stumbled back, but the mirror refused to release her. Instead, it bled thin streaks of crimson dripping down the glass like tears as the reflection shifted again. This time showing Mendeecees standing in a shadowed clearing, wearing a crown made from dark vines and glowing stones. His hand intertwined with Erica's as if the two were ruling over something she could not yet comprehend. Erica's face was victorious, her smile sharp, posture regal as the red binding thread encircled both her wrists and Mendeecees, pulsing with a sinister rhythm. Yandy's chest tightened as she tried to look away, but the mirror clung to her gaze, dragging her deeper into its prophecy. Suddenly, the scene shifted once more, showing a flash of a future she had never imagined. Mendeecees and Erica standing before a crowd, their joined hands raised like leaders chosen by fate. The village cheering as if their union was destiny's final answer. And behind them, Yandy appeared again, collapsed in the dirt, the ring that once symbolized her vow shattered beside her. Panic surged through her, but before she could pull away, the mirror's voice and echo of countless ancestors whispered a chilling revelation. The killer was someone she loved. The words rang through her ears, cold and merciless, making her heart pound so hard it felt like it might break through her chest. She gasped for air, realizing the prophecy wasn't just about betrayal or heartbreak. It was about death, consequence, and the unraveling of a fate she had unknowingly entangled with her own hands. The mirror flashed again, showing Erica hovering over her fallen body with an expression Yandy couldn't fully decipher. Was it satisfaction, regret, or something darker? The image dissolved before she could analyze it, replaced by swirling shadows that twisted into shapes resembling creatures with hollow eyes. They circled Mendeecees, whispering in languages she couldn't understand. Ah! Their voices blending with the fading chant of the mirror's warning. Yandy tried to move, but her legs felt rooted in place, frozen by fear and disbelief. She reached out a trembling hand toward the glass, hoping to shut it down, hoping the visions would stop. But the surface erupted in another violent ripple, sending a shockwave of cold energy through her arm. Suddenly, she saw herself again, this time older, hardened. Standing in the center of a battlefield with torn robes and glowing marks across her arms, leading forces she didn't recognize. Behind her, shadows and light clashed like two armies destined to destroy each other. And then she saw Erica on the opposite side, her eyes burning with defiance, her aura crackling with corrupted magic. Between them stood Mendeecees, sin moving, undecided, caught between two destinies pulling him in opposite directions. The mirror's final whisper seeped into her mind, soft but deadly. The war has only begun. The glass went still. The room fell silent. Yandy stumbled backward, breath shaking, heart pounding with a mix of terror and awakening. Because now she understood something that changed everything. This wasn't just a love triangle. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a prophecy. Battle. A fate that tied her, Erica, and Mendeecees together in ways she had never imagined. And whether she liked it or not, the war the mirror warned her about was already unfolding around her. Yandy sank onto the edge of her bed, her pulse racing as the echoes of the mirror's prophecy continued to vibrate through her bones, each whisper replaying in her mind like a warning she couldn't outrun. And for the first time since the scandal erupted, she felt the crushing weight of destiny pressing down on her shoulders with a force that made it hard to breathe. She tried to steady herself, gripping the blanket beneath her fingertips. But the room felt smaller than before, the walls inching closer as though the house itself was reacting to her unraveling emotions. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, every inhale like borrowed time, and she could still see flashes of the vision her lifeless body. The broken ring, Mendeecees crowned in shadows, Erica smiling as if fate belonged to her. Her tears came suddenly, hot and uncontrollable. Not just from fear, but from the unbearable realization that everything she had believed in, love, loyalty, magic, destiny, had twisted into a storm she never asked to enter. She buried her face in her hands, her sobs quiet but sharp, echoing through the dim room like the last fragile notes of a song on the verge of breaking. But even through the pain, a small spark inside her refused to die. It flickered faintly, like a candle fighting against the wind, reminding her that she had survived visions, betrayal, and a world turning against her. She wiped her tears with trembling hands and lifted her head, inhaling slowly as she forced herself to find strength in the very place where everything had fallen apart. Because if the mirror's prophecy was true, if a war was coming, then she needed to rise before it arrived on. She needed to be ready for whoever would try to destroy her next. If you're still here after everything Yandy just witnessed, then you already know this story is about to explode in ways none of us are ready for. The mirror has spoken, the prophecy is set, and the real battle is only beginning. So tell me in the comments, do you think Yandy can survive what's coming? Is Erica truly the enemy, or is someone else pulling the strings? And what role will Mendeecees play when fate forces him to choose a side? Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because the next chapter is going to change everything.